true stories of unexplainable phenomena, you will see real photos and video evidence of the ghostly interactions that have haunted this property for decades. Every shadow hides a story, and every mystery holds a secret. Keep your wits about you, for the spirits are known to make their presence felt, and one never knows who or what might be with us. Are you ready to face the unknown spirits on this property? Because I'm sure they're ready to meet you. Please keep your heads, hands, feet, and restless children inside the train at all times. Now, let us begin the Paranormal Train Tour, where the thrills refuse to rest in peace. Thrills they sourced from this very property. Remarkably, most of their buildings are not only still standing, but are still being used today. Have you ever experienced our newly expanded and remodeled military museum? Though hard to see from the outside, that was once the Gale family's chicken coop. These structures, including the family home, bear silent witness to over a century of history. Imagine the whispers of the past echoing through this land and its buildings. These very walls were a repository of the lives, laughter, and tragic memories of those who once walked these grounds. Stay close and listen carefully, for the past has a way of reaching out to those who dare to listen. A century later, in 1960, the Grahams family purchased the old, rundown dairy farm. Not having any experience as farmers, they repurposed the lowest level of the big barn into a resale shop. The family spent their time scouring the area for any items that they could repair or refinish and resell. That humble resale shop eventually evolved into the world-famous antique malls, which you will be able to explore and do your own paranormal investigations after this train tour. In their free time, sons Greg and Bill collected old cars, tinkering with them and fixing them up. Their collection grew, drawing the attention of car enthusiasts and collectors. Soon after, a visitor offered an irresistible price for one of their cars, and a realization was formed. The car business was much more fun and profitable than the second-hand resale business. They have reinvested their profits back into the business every year since. Today, Volo Museum is a world-traveled tourist destination, welcoming hundreds of thousands of visitors every year.
See the bird?
This is just interesting to see it. You know what I mean? This is the height.
Like many of the items on display, the buildings around you have their own stories and secrets. This tour will share some of the most chilling and hair-raising tales that have happened to the Grahams family, their employees, and visitors, just like you. We will start by looking over at the maroon building next to the big green trains. That building, more than 40 years old, began as an antique fire station exhibit with a large collection of antique fire trucks and firefighting equipment. Shortly after its construction, the building mysteriously burned down overnight, leaving behind only its charred skeleton. After an extensive investigation, the cause is still a mystery. It was then rebuilt into an automotive shop for the detailing and maintenance of collector cars. Working late one cold winter night, Brian Grahams cut through this building to get to the employee parking lot. Feeling his way through the pitch-black room, he ran his hands over the hood of a car when its horn suddenly blared from the darkness. Startled, Brian jumped back to realize he was face to face with a vehicle born from the twisted imagination of Stephen King, the iconic car from the horror movie Christine. It had just arrived to be added to the museum's movie car collection. The next days were stunned to find the entire Titanic Museum underwater. Throughout the building's 40 years and through countless storms, it had never flooded. Security footage revealed the flooding originated not from the outer edge of the building, but from the middle of the exhibit, beneath our featured Titanic car, a 1912 Renault. Only 2 of these vehicles were ever built. One lives here, in our Titanic Museum. The other, it rests, in pieces, in the real Titanic's watery grave at the bottom of the ocean. The next morning, they searched everywhere, finding no burst pipes, cracks in the foundation, or any point where water could have entered the building. It hasn't flooded since. This story of this mysterious flooding went viral overnight, making worldwide headlines.
Mysterious flood at a Titanic exhibit near Chicago has museum officials shaking their heads. Surveillance video captured the moment the water came in. It happened during recent storms in the Chicago area, but according to museum officials, they inspected the building and there were no roof leaks or any other obvious points of entry for such large amounts of water. They say the building has been known for its paranormal activity with numerous unexplainable occurrences over the years. And the latest incident, they say, was no exception.
It was even recently featured on the national TV show Paranormal Caught on Camera on the Travel Channel.
Coming up, an eerie scene in Illinois when a Titanic exhibit mysteriously floods.
One odd occurrence might be dismissed, and 2 could be chalked up to coincidence. But 3 major mysteries are pretty convincing evidence that whatever is built on these grounds is unwelcome.
Does Titanic still live around there?
No, it's in the ocean.
Oh, yeah.
On the 1960, many of the Grahams family have lived in this house, all of them encountering an abundance of paranormal activities. Everything from TVs, radios, and lights turning on by themselves to regular sightings of shadowy figures. Though normal to them, it was an unsettling experience whenever anyone visited. One particularly eerie story happened in the middle of the night. Museum founders Greg and Myra Grahams were fast asleep when Greg suddenly woke up. Looking around, he realized the room was filled with smoke. He then faintly saw a shadowy figure standing at the foot of their bed. A long, crooked finger slowly beckoning him forward. Greg quickly discovered the smoke was coming from the floorboards, from some smoldering electrical wires. He extinguished them, saving their lives. As the smoke cleared, he found an old leather satchel next to the wires hidden between the joists. Greg was hesitant to tell Myra about the ghostly apparition that appeared in front of him. But before he could describe what he saw, she nervously admitted to seeing the same shadowy figure. Was it there to warn them, or to bear witness to their fate? And what about that satchel? At the time, Greg didn't think much of it. Years later, a grave discovery was made, making a bone-chilling connection to it, which you will discover later in this tour. Surely nothing out of the ordinary could happen in a parking lot like this, right? Wrong. A car transporter traveling from Texas arrived after hours to deliver a vehicle and asked permission to sleep in our parking lot overnight until we opened. Our cameras recorded his arrival shortly after midnight, only to then watch him leave abruptly. The next morning he returned, visibly shaken and eager to deliver the car and leave as quickly as possible. When asked if he was okay, this tough and unshakable driver, who sleeps with a Smith & Wesson pistol for protection, revealed that he had encountered the most frightening thing he had ever seen, something even his gun could not protect him from. He said, as he settled in for the night, he looked through his windshield and saw a man in a trench coat walking across the parking lot towards a building. Assuming it was security, he opened his door and called out to him. But the figure did not respond and continued his steady walk. The truck driver called out again, louder, trying to get his attention. The figure kept walking and walking, and then, without hesitation, walked right through the solid wall of the antique mall. Shocked by what he had seen, the tough trucker immediately jumped behind the wheel of his rig to get as far away from whoever or whatever was patrolling this property, despite being from out of state and having no other place to stay. Speaking of that antique mall, did you know that it's older than 36 of the 50 United States? Built in 1848, it stands as the epicenter of the property's paranormal activity. See that window? It's the highest point of the building, 70 feet above the ground, and the setting for our next chilling tale. While shopping and exploring the antiques up on the 4th floor, a woman couldn't shake the unsettling feeling of being watched. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed something move by that roof peak window, 70 feet up in the air. When she turned to look, she was stunned to see a young boy peering back at her. But from the outside of the window, trembling and backing away, she managed to capture a photograph of the boy before he vanished into thin air. On another quiet weekday, while browsing the 3rd floor, another woman picked up an antique mirror and peered into its old, tarnished glass. To her shock, she saw the reflection of a young man in a weathered military uniform standing directly behind her. Believing it to be a prank, she confronted the cashier. Confused, the cashier responded, "Ma'am, you're the only one that's been out there today. Watch the screens for even more evidence of hauntings from our own security footage." Notice this woman steps into the booth and feels a hard pinch on her arm, right as the security footage jumps. She goes and gets her husband to show him. Even more evidence of hauntings from our security cameras and submitted by guests can be seen on the Antique Malls Facebook page. However, time is growing as short as the spirits are restless, so we must move on. The tales of our barn's hauntings. The lingering question remains: who or what haunts the grounds of Volo Museum and its antique malls? As the stories accumulated over the decades, a pattern emerges. A recurring presence of a boy or young man dressed in a trench coat, a long coat, or even a soldier's uniform. The Grahams family eager for answers, researched extensively, and most clues traced back to the original family that settled on these grounds, the Gale family. Across the street, you'll see a small old cemetery. This is where the Gales are buried. You'll see a tall white stone pillar with some American flags planted next to it. It reads, Henry Wallace Gale, born May 25th, 1842, died in Tennessee February 16th, 1863. Revealing their son, Henry, fought and died in the Civil War at the age of 21. Remember the old satchel found by Greg Grams? It was later identified as part of a Civil War soldier's uniform, possibly returned to the family with their son's remains. Could the ghostly figure have been Henry, trying to protect him from a potential fire, or was he leading Greg to a clue about his identity? Is Henry a restless young spirit unable to move on, forever lost, trying to find his way home? Or is he trying to convey a message to us? Henry Wallace Gale, if that is you, we hear you, and you have our attention. The stories you've heard are not just about hauntings. They're about history, memories, and the lingering presence of those who came before us. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, the tales of Volo Museum invite you to ponder the mysteries of the past and the echoes of those who once walked these grounds. As we arrive back at our final destination, here are a few more stories told by the current employees of the Volo Antique Malls. These occurrences actually happened to them firsthand.
So from what I know, all three malls are haunted, but they always say that number one is going to be the most haunted, but I've seen my fair share and heard my fair share of strange things happening around this level.
I'm counting my money, and suddenly I feel a punch to the middle of my back. So I immediately whip around, and I just start kind of like telling the floor walker, something just hit me. He's like, no way. He got it from the seat. He's like, what are you talking about? That doesn't happen here in Mall 2. And I was like, yes, it does. I've had many experiences in Mall 2.
And then the most intense experience was my Aunt Marilyn was checking out one night, and someone made a comment like, is the ghost locked up? And they were laughing about it. And he went to leave, and then bang, 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 pounding noises in the elevator shaft itself. And she ran out crying, and there was glass that appeared to have been kicked outward. It was almost like a foot came from inside the case to kick its way out, like an explosion almost.
There was a painting purchased by a regular customer. She brought the painting home, and at first, lights started turning on by themselves. Then she started hearing children running back and forth through her home, laughter. A music box song would play in the middle of the night. So she called here and she's like, I don't want the money back. I need to get rid of it. Oh gosh, yeah. So there is a tube that is embedded between the canvas and the frame on the back.
One time they took images inside a mirror that was in this very spot on the back wall. And it was one of our cashiers that had passed away. You could see his glasses, his white hair because he was older. And we couldn't believe it because there's no way that person taking the picture knew that person had passed away.
And then I'll turn my head around the counter and I'll look around the corner and nobody's there.
What happened was there was a group of little kids. It sounded like my daughter was about 4 at that time. And there was a group of little kids seemed to be circling around in a circle up here running, because it was that kind of a pattern of running of children. And when I asked the historian, there's a grave up the road on Fisher Road, and he said that is a mass grave of children that died in Volo in the 1800s of Scarlet up there.
Remember when the TV show Ghost Lab had their experience? Here are the tests and the security footage of what they found.
While reviewing the video surveillance footage of the alarm door, Steve Hawk finds some evidence he thinks could be significant.
See it? The shadow to right there. Like, right there. That's it, right there. Yep, right outside here.
Oh, it was up there. Yeah, we actually caught a shadow here moving across the floor in very close proximity to where the alarm went off. Could that be a spirit actually leaving the building, or was it just a shadow of someone walking by?
Okay, I need you to walk by the wheelchair.
Look at the way the whole frame shakes when Steve walks by.
Look at that. And look at the banner shaking. In the original video, nothing moved. The shadow just passed by. It didn't interrupt or disturb anything in the area. When we recreated the shadow with Steve Harris, he basically shook the entire floor. The camera was moving back and forth. You could see chandeliers shaking. So we concluded that there's no way that the shadow could have been caused by someone, because they would have caused all the vibrations to shake. Once you've eliminated everything that you could think of, then you're left with possible paranormal activity.
Remember that the Travel Channel show Paranormal Caught on Camera featured Titanic Museum's mysterious flooding. Here's a look at their investigation.
We walked in one morning, opened up, and the whole thing was underwater. We're like, it's really strange. We had a storm, but this building is 40 years old. It's never flooded, and we've had way more storms. So we were looking around to see if there was a crack or something, and when we were looking around, we're checking the foundation, no cracks. There's no reason, no burst pipes. There's nothing going on. So then we went to the security tape.
And when they watch the tape, they see this. Water pooling from underneath an antique automobile. A replica of the one single car that happened to be on the Titanic when it sank.
This is the water throughout the whole exhibit and hasn't flooded since. Tons of storms have come through, not one week since. It's crazy.
Something else that's crazy is that the Titanic exhibit is the only area in the museum that flooded.
The museum itself sits on 35 acres. So there's probably 20 plus buildings with over 50 exhibits. So the fact that no other exhibits on all the property flooded, just the Titanic flooded, and we're like, what? It's crazy.
When you examine this video, it's so strange. I mean, this water is coming from nowhere. I mean, it's not coming from the walls, it's not dripping from the ceiling, it's not rushing in from any other source, but from underneath this vehicle, this car.
The flood we see on the surveillance footage seems to kind of creep into the whole exhibit, and it just kind of reminds me of like how exactly the Titanic would have sunk. Like I just imagine level by level by level just getting flooded. There's like an ominous slow effect that would remind me of what a sinking ship would have probably seemed like before your demise.
We're actually even more ominous is what happened in this very same location before.
It started as an antique firefighter exhibit, so it had a few old engines and some equipment and uniforms and things like that. And it had that for several years, and then one night overnight it just burned everything. So like the skeleton of the building, and we couldn't find any gas leaks or any source of electric shortage or anything like that.
So could the building itself be haunted?
I love the idea that this particular building is somehow just like inherently built for irony. You know, it's a firefighter's museum and it burns down. Now it's a Titanic museum and it floods. Like this building has its own personality, and that personality is one that is going to make us sort of wonder about the level of coincidence in the world. I think that it's not the building that's necessarily haunted. I think it's the objects that hold spiritual attachments. Like most museums, they tend to be really active because a lot of the objects within the museum have their own past, have their own history, might even have spirits that are attached to the object because they're very special.
Especially if those objects represent a horrific tragedy.
And it makes you wonder if our reverence and awareness of this tragic moment in history might be drawing in the activity.
After receiving word of the skepticism of two morning show radio hosts, Joe and Tina from Star 105.5, Brian Grams dared them to spend the night in the barn. The hosts accepted the challenge. Throughout the night, they encountered a series of eerie occurrences that defied explanation. Fully charged equipment batteries mysteriously drained inside the barn. When photographing antique dolls, cameras malfunctioned, giving undetected warnings. Distinct footsteps were heard from the floors above, even though they were alone in the building. Reviewing their photographic evidence the next morning, they were astounded. They found a skull-shaped orb in every single picture that had Tina in it. In a particularly chilling photo taken on the 4th floor in front of the same 70-foot window where the woman had seen the boy peering in from the outside, the orb not only appeared, but seemed to have a distinct face and body, standing directly in front of Tina, staring at her. But Don't take our word for it. Listen and see for yourselves.
I'm sorry, something was like right on me. I felt like somebody just pushed me in the vacuum.
I got to check out the bathroom. I was thinking it
That's exactly what happened. I walked up here and I felt something I felt like someone pushed me in the vacuum. That's when he yelled, because I fell into it.
Did you see something?
No, I just felt it.
This is actually in the Discovery Channel on the Ghost Lab channel. This is where the shadow man ran down and out the door right here. I'm scared myself. I'm telling you.
Enter and open every day from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Scan the QR code on the screens for a free map of all of the paranormal hotspots that you heard about in this video and see them for yourself. Be sure to take a card as you leave. It has the ghost hunting QR code on the front, and on the back is an instant discount to apply what you already paid for this tour towards our upcoming Time Warp Express Christmas trolley adventure. Take plenty of pictures and examine the reflections closely. You never know what you might discover. If you do find something intriguing, please share it with us. We'd love to hear about it, and maybe even tell your story on our next Paranormal Tour.
Where do we get the cards? Oh, they said after we get done here.